baba yako na baba yangu ni mabeste. Kwa hivyo mimi na wewe tusikosane.
And I'm here to report the Mwananchi how the Galana Kulalo project has fared so far.
Manze zimetushika lakini lazima jo tushike na njia nyingine QXYZ style. A big shout out to Benali manze jo beat chafua and of course 0000. Asante kwa kutupatia ngoma lakini manze jo cheki vile tuna flow nayo. Twende kazi. Wamenishika yo. Wamenishika yo.
Sir, I'd like to report about something. It's about the death of Senator Reynoso. In today's life, a person always has two choices, the good and the bad.
Where did that come from?
Let's meet after New Year's Day. I'll hand over the evidence to you.
What's important is you stand by it, whether it's life, family, and love.
NTV, turning on your world.
A very good morning to you and many thanks indeed for joining us today on the Leadership Forum here on Live. My name is Dibala Nair. I trust you slept easy, you've woken up well, and of course, you're really gang-ho to face the good day that the good Lord has afforded us. Today on the Leadership Forum, we'll be training our focus on leadership and the culture factor. Leadership and the culture factor. And of course, we took that long shot for you to see our panelists who are already here in studio who will take us through about this particular interesting topic about leadership and the culture factor. And we know that in the pursuit of executing business and business strategy, culture trumps strategy every time. Leaders understand the culture and they also recognize their responsibility in creating or changing it. Leadership, we can say, or the leadership culture is a self-reinforcing web of beliefs, practices, patterns, and behaviors. It's the way things are done, the way people interact, make decisions. Also, it's the influence they put on others as well. Leaders, or the leaders' own conscious and unconscious beliefs drive decisions and behaviors, and repeated behaviors become leadership practices. Eventually, these practices become the patterns of leadership culture. So the abiding question we're asking this morning is, how do you know what kind of leadership culture you have? And if you have the culture required for the strategy you set. So, of course, we shall be taking a broader, wide view of that, looking on different facets of how culture, different facets of the society, of how culture can actually be reinforced and it can be inculcated. And how also you can manage change through all that when you're trying to, of course, decipher or trying to also come up with a new, do you really enforce culture to people, or culture is something that just evolves organically? That will be much late in the course of the program. Our panelists are already here in studio with us, but you know the drill how we start. We begin with the dailies, and we just want to show you also what is in the dailies this morning. We begin with the Daily Nation. I'll use my laptop this morning. Uhuru handshake, not about dynasties, is what we have as a splash today. President declares end to public memorials honoring nation's founding father. This is how it looks this morning on the front page of the Daily Nation. And it says here also, I'll try and zoom in for you to see clearly, that leadership is not about where you were born or where you came from. It's not about the color of your skin or about your tribe. Leadership is the desire to serve, the desire to do good and make a difference in the lives of the people. This is what Uhuru Kenyatta said. And President tells of leaders who have branded his peace pact with Raila as a deal between well-established political families. He says leadership is about public service, not royalty or economic class. Remarks seen as directed at DP, who has styled himself as a hustler from a modest background. This story is well tucked away for you on page 5 of the Daily Nation. So there is a Ruto factor and the Raila question. DP William Ruto praised the founding president, saying he built a firm foundation upon which his successors have constructed a strong nation. Also, Raila, the question is, or the Raila question, ODM leader reached a peace deal with President Kenyatta in March 2018 and is believed to be a key player in 2022 elections. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Even as we're looking at the leadership and the culture factor, when we see these faces, who are our leaders, what sort of culture are they trying to portray, right? Those are some of the questions sometimes we'll also be throwing to a panelist this morning who are already here in studio with us. Also still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Matiang'i's stern warning on censors. Interior Cabinet Secretary puts politicians on notice over attempts to influence the outcome of the national population census, which begins tomorrow. He also reiterates his warning to owners of bars and other social places that they must close their businesses at 5 p.m. over the weekend to ease the process, saying, quote unquote, "We are sorry for the inconvenience caused, but it's only once in a decade." And that story continues on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, teachers win battle for promotion. Secondary school teachers to enjoy higher pay in new deal between Kuppet and TSC. This you can follow on the back page of today's Daily Nation. Also, tax fraud puts KRA on the spot. Tax fraud puts KRA on the spot. Police arrest Keroshe founder Tabitha Karanja in tax probe as DCI should say trains guns on officials said to be behind evasion racket. And find out why men lock out wives in list of beneficiaries. This story continues on page 3 of today's Daily Nation. Up next is the Standard, and this is what you're waking up to. But I can see People Daily wants to come before the Standard, and this is what is on the front page of the People Daily this morning. The unseen hand in 2019 census. I'll try and zoom out for you to see clearly. This is how it looks this morning. The unseen hand in 2019 census. Fate of 27 constituencies with low population threshold. 2022 succession politics and resource allocation metrics spur mass mobilization. Zooming in, we see also Matiang'i saying, quote unquote, "This is a straightforward exercise and let it remain that way. Asking people to move from this part of the country to the other is a primitive habit and should be stopped." You can see a related picture there. Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i addressing the press yesterday. He was with acting Treasury counterpart Ukuru Yatani and other cabinet colleagues. Also still on the front page of the People Daily, after 41 years, family ends Muzee's public memorial. The family of the founding father of the nation, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, yesterday ended his annual public memorial service. After 41 years, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced that the family had agreed to abolish the annual event, which will now be observed privately. The move brings to an end a 4-decade-old annual ritual since Kenyatta's death in 1978. And we have a quote here. "This will be the last celebration of Mzee in this manner," he told congregation or congregates at Holy Family Basilica during his father's 41st memorial service. "We shall each celebrate him as we remember him and in a manner in which we will be doing our things going forward," he added. He thanked retired President Arap Moi. The story continues on page 8 of the People Daily this morning. Also, Keroshe CEO spends night in police custody. You can follow this story on page 7 of the People Daily this morning. Moving forward, let's see what we have next. This will be the Standard for us. I'm trying to just pick the Standard. I don't know why it's evading me. But this is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. Drug wars, demos rock, judges talks. That is what we have on the front page of the Standard today. Cost retreat. CJ Maraga comes out to defend the judiciary after protests. Or protesters attempt to storm a hotel where all judges are holding annual meeting. You have this story on page 3. Let me try and see if... Actually, this story continues on page 3, and this could be the standard cost edition. I don't have my hard copy to just verify this, but still also on the front page of the Standard, 15,000 teachers to be promoted in New Deal. Diploma teachers to benefit after TSC struck deal with Kuppet as union proposes salary increase in the new CBA talks. The story continues on page 4 of the Standard. Also, Dynasty Hustler talk won't win you power. Dynasty Hustler talk won't win you power. There's a sidebar story there, Uhuru's message, in what is seen as a jab at his deputy president. That is a deputy. President Uhuru Kenyatta tells politicians that where one is born does not matter in pursuit of leadership, but service to Kenyans. This story continues on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Also, dramatic scenes as Keroshe's Tabitha and husband are arrested. Owners of Naivasha-based brewery Tabitha and husband Karanja seized after spending almost 24 hours in the offices since Wednesday night after police officers laid a siege on premises. That is what we have also on page 8 of the Standard this morning. Let's move on and try and see what is on the front page also of the Star. I'm trying to load it up quickly for you. Of course, it's a bit slow here with my laptop, but this is what is on the front page of the Star this morning. Jubilee leaders attack Uhuru tax cheats. Tax cheats war is a splash today. Jubilee leaders attack Uhuru tax cheats war. It's all about the crackdown. Politicians claim disputes should be handled by tax tribunal, not court. DPP has ordered prosecution of owners of Keroshe and Tycoon Humphrey Karaoke. The story continues on page 2 of the Star this morning. Don't incite censors, boycott Matiang'i tells politicians. Don't incite censors, boycott. Matiang'i tells politicians. This is what we have as a sidebar story there. Interior CS Fred Matiang'i has cautioned politicians against inciting constituents to boycott the census on Saturday. He said the exercise is straightforward and should not be politicized. The CS said Kenya is a modern country and the 2019 Kenya population and housing census should be treated with the decency it deserves. The story continues on page 10 of the Star this morning. Also, Google app rules to deny borrowers quick mobile loans. Google wants all mobile loan apps available on its Play Store platform to ensure the repayment period for loans is not less than 60 days. So how will this pan out? Let me try and zoom out for you to see clearly. There is a story. It continues on page 15 of today's Star. Now, yesterday there was this particular giraffe that was trending. People were retweeting, and thanks to one Kenyan who actually saw this and put it on the social media, the plight of this giraffe. And now we can see we have KWS, but this is from the veterinary department, who traced and treated the Nakuru tumor giraffe, right? It had a tumor, and a good Samaritan who spotted it took a picture and put it on social media. And of course, this is the remedial measure that was taken thanks to you. When you see this, it is always good to highlight, of course, the public and the attendant agency or will come to the rescue. And this is what that really happened yesterday. I can't remember the name of the guy who put this on Twitter yesterday, but I also retweeted his, of course, tweet, and this is a reaction, thankfully. Let's move on and see what is on the front page of the Business Daily. This is what is on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Loading up quickly, and it's all about the banks. It says banks raking. Is it? Yes, bank raking 85 billion shillings profit in 6 months. Right, that's how it is looking there. It says the lenders defy harsh economy. to report record earnings whose growth between January and June this year outpaced last year's. That is what we have on the front page. Let me try and zoom in. I can't also just see it clearly there. And the story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also still on the front page of the Business Daily, Centum CEO's pay falls 75% to 45 million shillings. Centum CEO James Moria's pay dropped by 75% to 45 million shillings last year after he missed out on bonus earnings for failing to meet the set annual performance targets. Mr. Moria had earned 177.6 million shillings, or an equivalent 14.7 million shillings per month in the year to March 2018, which includes a bonus of 132 million shillings. This is a story that you can follow also on page 4 of the Business Daily today. Also, census officials to transmit live data on special secure network is another story on the front page of the Business Daily. The transmission of the upcoming population and housing census data will be done through a special secure network to ward off the risk of unauthorized access to people's private information is another story there. ICT Secretary John Musheru yesterday said the census data system was locally assembled to give the state control over the gathering and transmission of the information. The story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning, and you can see a related picture there. Acting Treasury and Planning CS Ukur Yatani and other top government officials addressing journalists on the census set to start tomorrow night. During the briefing at Harambee House yesterday, CS Matiang'i said all bars will remain closed on Saturday and Sunday, right? So be aware of this. The story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also on the ticker today, 50% Safaricom staff now women. The telecommunications market leader says it has achieved 50% share of female employees on its payroll, coming amid an increase in the number of direct and indirect jobs growing 9% to 979,000. You can follow the story on page 8. And of course, yesterday they just released their sustainability report. The story continues on page 8 of the Business Daily today. Even as we're discussing about leadership and the culture factor, this is a pivotal, of course, move by Safaricom, where also in lining themselves with the SDGs, should be actually target or the goal number 5 about gender equality as well. You can follow the story on page 8. Also, 62 is the bags of coffee that Brazil produced last year, accounting for a third of global output and cementing its lead. Also, DPP Haji 6 luxury home for training. This is a story you can follow on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. Let me try and cross borders now, but I'll be remiss if I don't also show you what is on the front page of Taifa Leo this morning before we cross borders and see what is happening also outside the country. Taifa Leo is holding this particular splash for us this morning. Utaenda jela ukikataa sensa. This is a warning there. Watakao susia kutatiza ama kutoa habari za uongo wamo katika hatari ya kufungwa, kupigwa faini. And of course, that is laki moja if you are not cooperative on this exercise. The story continues on page 2 of the Taifa Leo. Also, Uhuru atangaza kufutilia mbali kwa maadhimisho rasmi ya kifo cha baba yake. The story continues on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Let me try and zoom in and see this picture, what the caption is reading as well here. And this is watu wa jamii ya Lichamus katika eneo la Kampi Samaki, kaunti ya Baringo, wakiandamana jana kulalamikia hatua ya kuwataka wahesabiwa katika eneo bunge la Baringo Kaskazini badala ya Baringo Kusini. Well, I hope I'm making a lick of sense there. You can follow the story also inside Taifa Leo as well. Let's cross borders and we head over now to Tanzania and Uganda. We see what is headlining the front pages of the Daily Monitor and the Citizen, that is Citizen in Tanzania and Daily Monitor in Uganda. Getting that quickly for you. This is what is a splash today. Let me try and just put a single page for you before we continue. There you go. 1,000 weddings at city church illegal. This is what it says. Unlicensed. The Anglican Church blessed the unions between 2006 and 2016 when the religious institutions had not been officially gazetted to administer the holy marriages. So if you're in Uganda and you got married between 2006 and 2016, your wedding, it could be illegal according to the headline today. So it's good to go to also the attendant organization or the government department to verify this. The story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor. 1,000 weddings at city church illegal. The Anglican Church blessed the unions between 2006 and 2016. Find out which Anglican church is this, and you can follow the story on page 4 of the Daily Monitor today. Also, don't go to Uganda. Rwanda tells citizens. This is still the border row here, and we can see this is a standalone picture, a view of the no man's land at Gatuna border post yesterday. There was slow business at the border despite the agreement signed between President Museveni and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame in Angola on Wednesday to resolve the tension between the two countries. Rwanda's State Minister for East Africa or East African Affairs, Olivier, advised Rwandans not to travel to Uganda. The story continues on page 7 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Also, there is no mafia in government. This is what Rugunda is saying. You can follow the story on page 6 of the Daily Monitor in today's, of course, Friday edition. Let's see what we have also on the front page of Mwananchi and the Citizen, still in Tanzania. Just to show you also what it is holding for us this morning. This is the Citizen in Tanzania for you. It says, Uganda, Rwanda leaders sign pact to end animosity. Museveni and Kagame sign an agreement to ease months of tensions after the two leaders exchanged accusations of spying, political assassinations, and meddling. The story continues on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. Eyewitness recounts fuel tanker disaster and aftermath. That story continues on page 2 as a sidebar story on the front page. You can see it there, but it continues on page 2. Also, TPA to spend billions on Lake Victoria Ports upgrade. The story continues on page 3 of the Citizen. And government to review SMEs policy to spur growth is another story that you want to follow also on page 2 of today's Citizen. And we can see a standalone picture or a related picture to the splash today. This is President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda and Paul Kagame of Rwanda shaking hands in Luanda, Angola on Wednesday after signing an agreement to end months of tensions between the two East African Community member states. Also looking on is Angolan President, that is Lourenco. And this story, you can follow it on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. And you saw also what is happening at the border as well. There's still bugbears and fears as far as the mediation or maybe the handshake is concerned. This is the Citizen for you. We have also the Mwananchi for you, and this is what it is holding for us this morning on the front page of Mwananchi. The Swahili version of the Citizen still in Tanzania, and this is what you're waking up to on the front page of Mwananchi this morning. Shahidi ashindwa kutambua mtuhumiwa kesi ya Kinambowe. That is what we have as a splash today. Also biashara karibu na barabara. Find all the details. This is a standalone picture there. Jafo utegua kitendawili uchaguzi serikali za mitaa leo. That story continues on page 4 of Mwananchi in Tanzania. Let's see what is happening in Rwanda, and I will put up the New Times for you to see also what is happening in Rwanda. Non-performing loans dropped to 5.6%. It says, this is the splash today, and it says non-performing loans is slightly to 5.6% in the first 6 months of this year, down from 6.4% in December 2018, as commercial banks made significant write-offs of bad debts. The story continues on page 3 of the New Times today. And MPFSS 2019, that was the hashtag. This is Central Bank Governor John Rwangombwa speaking at the meeting as Peace Uwase Masozera, Executive Director of Financial Stability, and Vice Governor Monique the Lukon in Kigali yesterday. Also, progressively, Huye Town is coming back to life. Follow the story on page 8 or 18 of the New Times. And have you also picked your copy of the East African lately? You have still today to do so if you haven't, to follow the details and get to understand what is happening in the region so far, right? This is how it looks this morning. How investors are making a killing from Ebola bonds. This is the East African for you. For the funds to flow to Congo, the deadly disease must cause at least 20 deaths in one other country within a specified time frame. The story continues on page 12 of the East African. I think you lost me there with the connection there, but that is the East African for you. There it goes. It's delaying a bit, but you can see it right now. How investors are making a killing from Ebola bonds. That is what we have on the front page of the East African this week. It will open up for you to see clearly. There you go. Also, Uganda uses $126 million, I should say, on Huawei cameras. That is a sidebar story there. It continues on page 4 of the East African as well. Also, is Uganda's SGR line plan back on track? That is another abiding question there. It continues on page 4 of the East African. Let me just show you the editorial cartoons and we buckle down to business with the panelists who are already here in studio. Remember, this morning we're discussing leadership and the culture factor, and we'll be also getting to hear what they have to tell us as far as culture is concerned this morning. So let me show you what we have on the inside the editorial page of the Daily Nation, and this is the editorial cartoon that we do have today, and it's all about tax evasion and what we've been seeing so far as far as the arrests are concerned. So this is the DPP and the CEO of Keroshe, Tabitha. I'll leave it for you to decipher this. But you know the drill, you know what is happening currently as far as tax evaders are concerned. This is what we have in the Daily Nation today. Let's see what Gado has drawn for us today in the Standard. And this is what you're waking up to also inside the Standard today. All right. I can see the People Daily's cartoon is coming up quickly before Gado's. Let me try and just lift that for you to see. And it's all about the census, which will be happening tomorrow and Sunday. The Ocha Express will be fully loaded, or it's fully loaded, and of course, it's heading to Ocha. No, I'm not relocating. I'm taking my family and property up country for census. And that's how it looks today. Stano, it says here Nifala at the back. Of course, many of the people were traveling up country, especially in the western part of the country. This is how they travel. The chicken, the goats on top of the carrier there. Yeah, that is what we have today inside the People Daily, the editorial cartoon. So let me try and see if I can get Gados quickly, then we wrap it up and go to a discussion this morning and see what it is also holding for us as far as leadership and culture is concerned. Well, I think I can just stress it here, but because of interest of time, we'll buckle down to a discussion with our panelists this morning. So you know the drill. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686 is our SMS portal. It is 32. Oh yeah, we have got a few minutes to 7 right now, 6:32 right now, and we want to buckle down to this discussion and have also a good time with the panel to just try and thrash out this matter and see how does it also affect the entire country. Leadership is not just within organizations, but also leadership in the country as well. We have a culture, and people have different ways of expressing their cultures as well. Allow me to introduce to you this morning Peter Ndeng, who is an economic development expert, also an author, and an executive coach. With us, Peter Dang. We have also Florence Mpaye, who is a lecturer at the Hekima Peace and Studies Institute. We do have with us Professor Dominic Mwenje, who is the CEO of Mater Hospital. Mary Mukindia, she is an executive coach. Also, we do have with us Mike Eldon, who is the lead managing consultant at the depot. Good morning, gentlemen and ladies. Good morning.
Hi.
Fantastic. So leadership and the culture factor. I don't want us to maybe just give a long introductory remarks, because we have all the lengthy time that we can on the lectern. So we just wanted to get maybe an input from you. When we talk about leadership and the leadership or the culture factor, what really comes up to your mind, Pete? Let's begin with you.
You know, I think this is one of the topics that, you know, leadership is so discussed, one of the most discussed topics. And people talk about personality, people talk about different influences on leadership. And I'm beginning to think that we give an unfair and maybe an inordinate amount of focus on culture as an influence on leadership. And that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about this morning. That I believe the influence is much more the other way. And culture is one of those things that once we understand what defines how we relate with each other, what defines how we work, how we marry, how we bury our dead, and so on, you find that actually it has little impact on the quality of leadership. And that's one of the things that I think we should unpackage this morning.
Right. Florence? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's been one full year, as I told you, since we last saw you on the program. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
You've been pretty busy.
Thank you. Yes, I think when I think of leadership, words like vision come to my mind, and also the whole concept of not only the leaders who have followers, but also self-leadership. And leadership is developed within a context, and in that context is where we find culture. And so for me, depending on the type of culture that exists within a particular context, and this culture is of course informed by the values that people both espouse and enact. It also has to be with experiences that people have collectively gone through. It has to do with the norms. It has to do with people's way of life, how you, even basically how you greet, how you smile, how you look at the whole question of gender. All those go to making an individual and ultimately the kind of leader that they will be. So leadership exists within a cultural context.
Leadership exists within a cultural context. Thank you very much. Professor Dominic Mwenje.
Thank you. Good morning. For me, Dibal, when we look at leadership, we have to put in the context. And today I'll be talking about the two continuums of leadership and culture and how they affect each other. There's that which I call the hate continuum and what I call the diversity continuum. And that is geared towards understanding a leader behavior. If we don't understand a leader behavior, then we cannot be able to understand the context within which culture affects leadership, and also leadership affects culture at the same time. We have to look at it from both sides. As we look at different leaders who have come and gone in different countries, in different organizations, when you focus on leader behavior, it becomes easy for us to see how that person's leadership style affects the culture within that context of the organization where that person is, and vice versa. So there's a shaping going on both sides, both from the cultural context and also from the leader behavior itself. Once we understand that context, it becomes easy for us now to look at leadership not just as an abstraction, but a living thing that lives in us in everything that we do on a daily basis.
Thank you, thank you. Prof, let's hear from Mary Mukindia.
Actually, I was listening to this too, and that's very interesting. You know, whenever somebody gets promoted, becomes an MP, or becomes a CEO, we say, I may change. You know, it's not the kind of person he was. Become an MP and suddenly the person changes character completely. And I guess what I was thinking, that if you want to be a leader, no matter how successful, you know, how you be successful depends on the culture that you find in there. Because, and that would be the interesting dichotomy, who affects who more? And can you actually change it? But I really think in order to be successful, no matter how good a leader you are, it really depends in that culture, in that environment you're in.
So will you be held ransom with the culture that you find
Exactly. We find our MPs get held in ransom. You know, we know people very well, and then within a year, they're kowtowing, they're doing all the things they said they would never do. And they really are different creatures. What is it that happens to them? Or somebody rises up above, becomes, you know, a big leader or a CEO or whatever, or you know, a leader in whatever organization in a church, and then suddenly they change. What is that? Interesting. Yeah. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Eldon.
I think not enough leaders are conscious enough or worry enough about the state of the culture that they are generating and role modeling. And I think it's because too many come up from some specialist technical function as accountants or lawyers or whatever it is, all very legitimate professions, but these are technical hard skills. And it's just like in our education system, it's only now we're about, hopefully, to introduce the values-based education, which brings in the culture factor. People aren't prepared to talk in the way that we're talking, because this is part of our lives, about culture and how it works backwards and forwards and upwards and downwards and over time. And the extent to which it is possible to change it, some people think it isn't, it is what it is, Kenyans are Kenyans, or the extent to which as a leader you're able to influence culture in one direction or another, actively, passively, whatever.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so I just want to run you by some of rules of engagement for the sake also of Lawrence, who has not been here for the last 1 year. Right, I have my yellow card, my red card here. This is just for time management. Each of you will have 5 minutes, and I have my bell as well.
A new bell.
Yeah, the new bell.
You're a new bell prize winner.
I'm a new bell prize winner. Thank you. Right, so if you hear me also tolling the bell, just know that you've gone way beyond 5 minutes, so I'll come and yank you off from the lectern as well. But did I tell you? Yeah, if I lift actually the yellow card, you're actually midway. So yeah, 2.5, you know, yeah, 2.5 minutes to your time. So don't get distracted by that, right? So that will also just enable you to manage your time. I saw you walking back from the lectern. Your mic has fallen off.
No, there's no microphone there. Oh, I keep this.
All right, it's fallen off. Just you'll be assisted with the mic so that we can continue. So we'll start to hear from Peter Ndeng, who is an economic development expert. Also, he's a speaker and author as well. He'll tell us more on this subject that we're using this morning, leadership and the culture factor. You know the drill. You can hit us on Twitter, @AMLiveNTV. @AMLiveNTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. Peter, you got 5 minutes now.
Thank you, Dubal, and good morning, Kenyans. I'm going to take a rather contrarian view on this subject this morning. I want to start by asking a simple question. If I were to ask you, do we have good leadership or bad leadership in Kenya? I probably don't have to do a scientific survey on this, but most likely, and my guess is that most people would say, for one reason or another, that they're not satisfied with leadership. Many would say we have bad leadership. And so my follow-up question would be, why? Why is it that we, or you think we have bad leadership? And this is where the conversation gets very interesting, because different people will have different views and people will blame one thing or another. But it is also where I think we need to be clear on certain definitions that sometimes get murky, sometimes get mixed up. One of those is the distinction between power and leadership. People scramble for power. People hold positions of power. But that does not in itself make them leaders. You may have power over me because of the position you hold, or maybe just the relationship we have. But that does not make you a leader to me. And so many people who are scrambling to get power will step on, trample on, abuse, and actually mismanage the very people that they intend or pretend to want to lead, so that they get in those positions without ever really thinking about leadership. How am I going to lead them? And so the question is, are we really developing leaders? Are there really people in our society, in the context of Kenya, who are really wanting to lead? Or have we developed a culture, if you will, of competition for power? I, for a long time, have been disturbed by a statement that I hear a lot. People say, you deserve the leaders that you have, or the leaders that you have are the leaders you deserve. In effect, what this argument seems to say is that these leaders are what they are because of you. And in the democratic context, I suppose you could argue that you voted for those leaders. But of late, I've been wondering to myself, how true is this? Because if you ask yourself, if you try to absolve leaders of their ills, absolve people of their corruption and their bad leadership by placing the discussion on the people who are being led, I think we are missing the point. And this is where people want to say, there is bad here because you are bad. And the argument is strong that if you're emerging from the mud, you will be muddy. But let me give you an illustration that has sort of been disturbing my mind. And I'm going to use an illustration from another country that I visited a number of years ago, which I think will be worth our conversation this morning. I used to serve as the CEO of a microfinance institution called Faulu, Kenya. At that time, microfinance was a big topic, and everybody was, competing and trying to define what this whole beast was. And during that time, the country that was sort of held up as the mecca, if you will, of microfinance was Bangladesh. And so many people who are in this industry would find their way or find an opportunity to go to Bangladesh to see how they were doing microfinance. Organizations like the Grameen Bank were doing phenomenal things. So, like everybody else, a group of us went to Bangladesh. We went and spent 2 weeks going around, talking to people, listening to practitioners and methodologies they were using and so on. Some of the things about Bangladesh as a country really amazed me. Where back in Kenya, you have some 42, 43 tribes or so, or ethnic communities. In Bangladesh, you have effectively one language. When you talk about religion, it's effectively one religion. In culture, you find we have all these multi-subcultures and so on. There, it is essentially one culture. So you're talking about women's roles are like this, men's roles are like this. This is how society is organized. So on the surface, you'd say here is a place where it is and should be much easier to be able to mold and to have unity and to have even opportunity for great leadership. Well, let me tell you an incident we had there. We were walking around one afternoon, and during one of the afternoons where we were just talking to these groups, just like the groups we have here, groups of women taking loans, paying back, and so on. And it's hot, and we were just sort of idly watching how they were doing this. And I asked a question of one of the people. I said, this woman just took a loan. What happens if she doesn't pay back that loan? The interpreter turned around and asked the women in their language, and a conversation ensued. And after a while, she comes back to me and says, the women are asking, can you rephrase your question? And I said, it sounds like a very simple question. This woman just got a loan. If she doesn't pay her loan, what happens to her? Do you go to her house and take her furniture? What do you do? Because back in Kenya, we were struggling with loan repayment, people taking loans that they don't want to pay back. So here was a simple question. They go back and have a conversation, and the lady comes back and says, the women are asking, why would she not pay back her loan? And I was amazed, thinking that their default question was, you pay back what you borrow. And our default question is, how do I get away if I don't pay? And so you would imagine then that the leaders who would emerge out of a culture like this would be very, very good. Let me close with this. If you look at the transparency index of their ratings of Bangladesh and Kenya today, you will find that Bangladesh is ranked actually more corrupt than Kenya. It is one of the most corrupt, most poorly led countries in the world. Why? Why out of that, and what is influencing what? I want to have a conversation not just so much about what is culture and leadership, but why aren't we talking about integrity and the cause for the bad leadership that we have? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. And we really do appreciate, of course, we've taken some salient points from what Pete Ndeng has raised this morning and probing questions, especially when it comes also to corruption as well. Up next, we want to hear from Florence Baye. She's a senior advisor, peace building practice at Kima Institute of Peace Studies and International Relations. And this morning, we are discussing, of course, the leadership and the culture, leadership and the culture factor. You got 5 minutes beginning now, Florence.
Thank you very much, Dubal. I think for me, when I think of the whole question of leadership, I want to go back to the good book that says, without a vision, people perish. Most of the times when you hear people talk about leadership, what comes up, the images that come up in people's minds are somebody who we can look up to, somebody who will be inspiring us, somebody who will be taking us from where we are currently to a place where they think we should be going. And that place that we are going to, they are forward looking, and the place that we are going to is a better place. And so for me, the whole question of leadership, which is very, very broad, because some people think that leadership is a question of personality. Others think people are born leaders. Others think people grow up into leadership. So we all have very many different definitions on what leadership really is. But for me, the bottom line is, when we think of leaders in history and people who everybody wants to emulate as good leaders, we'll come up with names like, for instance, very recent, we'll think of Mandela. Many people have talked a lot about Bobby Collymore, who recently passed on. We'll talk about somebody like Obama. We'll talk about somebody like Kofi Annan. We'll talk about somebody like Mother Teresa. We'll talk about people like Gandhi. And when one studies each one of these individuals, the thing that is most striking for me is that they were individuals that recognized the importance and the value of service, role modeling. They're individuals who did not take on leadership as a role to be served, but they took on leadership as something that they needed to give out. They felt they had a contribution to make to society. They saw something that was not right and wanted to make it right. So for me, the whole question of leadership is us stepping back and asking ourselves, at an individual level, how am I as a leader? Because leadership for me is not also just those that we have put in positions of power, but leadership for me is every individual in society. The whole question of self-leadership. What are the values that guide me on a day-to-day basis when I'm doing my work? Whether I'm at the marketplace, whether I'm a hairdresser, whether I'm a tattoo driver, whether I'm a CEO, what are those values that guide me? So in the absence for me of that whole question of self-leadership, then it becomes very difficult for us to be able to expect good leadership as it has been elusive in our context here in Kenya. So when I think of leadership, there's a wide spectrum. You're thinking of what is authentic leadership. We had the financial meltdown, I think in 2008. And that financial meltdown, the cause of that was of people who were in leadership positions, who were emulated by many people, but there was no authenticity, there was no integrity. So they played with figures. And the whole globe went into a meltdown, financial meltdown. So one would ask themselves, is it a question of competency? Because competency is there, okay? But what is it that we require when we talk about leadership? So for me, the whole question of values becomes very, very, very critical. What are these values that people not only espouse, because it's one thing to think that for me, it's good to have integrity, but how do I enact integrity in my day-to-day life? So I think we need to take a step back and look at the whole spectrum of what people say leadership is all about and point back to ourselves as individuals and ask ourselves, as a leader, how am I in my day-to-day life? And then on the basis of that, when we go to elect leaders, when we want to put leaders, political leaders in positions, then at least at that point, we have people of quality, people of integrity, people who we can bank on, people who are visionary, who want to take their followers to a better place, so to speak. So for me, the question of leadership and culture is very, very critical. And the culture is based a lot on values, the values that people have in a community. And if those values are strengthened, then you have people of integrity and you have a leadership that people can look upon to be able to meet their aspirations as a society. Because leaders ordinarily rally people around them towards a particular place.
Right. Thank you, Florence. And of course, she's asking us to step back on the individual level and ask ourselves, what are the values that guide us on a day-to-day or on a daily basis in our work, right? And of course, leadership is a wide spectrum when you're looking at the whole gamut of the leadership topic, authentic leadership. And she says that, of course, within the leadership culture, the issue of values is pivotal. And that is where it is all predicated on. And we shall also be discussing this much, much later also in the course of the program. Up on the lectern right now, we have Professor Dominic Mwenja, who is the CEO of Mater Hospital. He has 5 minutes, beginning now, sir.
Thank you, Dibal. I want to look at leadership from a contextual point of view. Usually we look at leadership as this abstract, so that we have all these different definitions of leadership. But unless we start looking at leadership from a leader behavior perspective, we are not going to be able to understand leadership. I look at two continuums. One, what I call the hate continuum, which is usually exploited by those in leadership, either to divide people or for their own personal benefit. And with this, we start by an opinion you have about somebody or some people. That opinion becomes a bias. That bias becomes a prejudice. That prejudice becomes a stereotype. And that stereotype becomes hate. And within that continuum, the leader behavior for those who are leading our people usually find different parts of that to exploit for their own benefits. Let me look at the other diversity continuum. And the diversity continuum starts with the other side of the hate continuum, where you have uniformity on one side, and then you have diversity on the other side. And our leaders are very good at exploiting both those two for their own personal gains. On the uniformity part of the diversity continuum, this is where there is expectation that certain people should behave in a certain way based on certain stereotypes that are usually exploited. This is where the haters reside. This is where the tribal nationalists reside. This is where the racists reside. This is where the white supremacists reside. This is where narcissism resided. On the other side, you have diversity. That's why you have the likes of the Martin Luther King and others, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and others, who preach diversity in the absence of the hate continuum. That means we don't exploit people's stereotype of each other for our own personal gains as leaders. Now, when you look at those, and we have seen it several times, if you look at the culture of handouts in this country, the culture of handouts was perpetuated by our political leadership, which has become a part of national psyche as a people. And therefore, as politicians go to the villages, they're expected to give money, they're expected to give, they're expected this and that. That now feeds into their behavior of wanting to get as much as possible, so when they go to the village, they are able to give and give the handouts. If you look at our national psyche of the last 6 years, it has been looked at from two different perspectives. One, hard work pays. When I grew up in the 70s, I knew I worked hard and I benefited from my hard work. You do well in school and you get a good job and you'll be successful. Fast track that to 1990s and 2000s. And you see the last survey we had, I believe was sometime earlier last year among our young people. The belief is you really don't have to work hard. You just have to hustle. You just have to be that person who is smarter than the next guy and put the least effort. You see, that's a national psyche that affects our culture as a people. And that is perpetuated by the leader behavior that we see amongst our people. And therefore, when we look at the leader behavior in organizations, in the political arena, we have to look at that from the context that that behavior affects who we are as a nation, it affects our culture as a people, it affects how we treat each other. And that's why I'm a true believer in teaching cross-cultural issues with our people. And I'll give you an example. If you get a young policeman who comes out of Kiganjo police station, and I did that in my village, and I see these two young Kalenjin guys right in the middle of Kikuyu land. And the first question I asked them was, how much do you know about the Kikuyu culture before you got here? The only thing he could tell me is, Professor, hawatuniwezi. And that's a policeman, because there is no cultural sensitivity in the training. And that's why what Mike was saying, when you start looking at the new curriculum now, when you start teaching culture and the cultural values, we start to demystify the stereotypes that we see people giving other people. It makes it possible for us to move to the diversity part of the continuum, where we accept each other for who we are and we understand where we are coming from, instead of using the bias, the opinion, the stereotype, the prejudice to lead and divide our people. And that's why when we pay attention to how our leaders behave, we know how they affect the culture and the culture affects them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Dominic Mwenje there, giving his perspective, of course, from the continuum or two continuum aspect, that is the diversity continuum, and also from the hate continuum as well. And we shall also be drilling deep at this on the other side of a break. We'll take a short break right now. Remember, your opinion can become a bias, your bias can become a prejudice, and from the prejudice you can also have a stereotype, and that finally also gives birth to hate. We take a short break right now, and we have just briefly here Colin Zomoni saying our Kenya leadership culture mostly has become a transactional kind of leadership. The leaders get into leadership position and run away from people's problems or cause more problems to the people. Culture was a way of maintaining peace and unity in the society through cultural norms. Right, we'll take a short break right now. When we circle back, we continue with more. Mary Mukineo is up on the lectern. We shall hear from her on the other side of the break.
wale wanajitambua, yani wale wanajiamini.
Yani someone took their sweet time and thought about us.
Rembo TV, simply beautiful.
Breakfast is not complete without the new Minute Maid NutriDefense's Nectar Plus. Complete the most important meal of the day with the goodness of great tasting juice fortified with vitamin E and zinc to complement your family's nutritional needs. Minute Maid NutriDefense's Nectar Plus. Breakfast complete.
Babe, is everything okay?
Everything is okay, babe. I am just...
You are happy?
I'm happy. I'm excited.
I feel nervous.
I know, yeah. Oh my.
That first cry, that is everything. Welcome to my world. Majesty, Bahati.
Super Loaf, slices of life.
Tell me more about my biological mom.
She was a housekeeper. She worked for your parents.
I'm glad she didn't have an abortion.
She would never have done something like that. So how's Scarlett? Have y'all set that wedding date yet?
Not yet. But when we do, you'll be the first one to know.
Before we get married, I really want to finish the plans for the church. It's the least I can do for God.
Yeah, I just saw a gun.
Are you okay? I'm okay.
Why did you wait so long to come to the hospital?
I didn't feel too sick.
September 2019 and January 2020 intakes are ongoing. Call us today on 0724 256 162 or 0725 751 878. Kenya Methodist University. The future is here.
Enjoy all your favorite NTV programs on all free-to-air set-top boxes and digital TVs. Catch us on ADN Channel 101 and 103, DSTV Channel 271, GoTV Channel 91, Zuku Channel 13, and StarTimes Channel 106. Download the Nation News app from apps.nation.co.ke to watch this live broadcast. NTV. Turning on your world.
Right, welcome back. You're watching the Leadership Forum here on AM Live, and we're continuing with a conversation apace about the leadership and the leadership culture, or the culture factor. And we have Mary Mukundia. She's on the lectern right now to also give us her aspect of leadership and the culture factor. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Debal. Morning, Kenyans. I have a question for you. What came first, or which came first? The chicken or the egg? And I think that's the question we're discussing here, because in my view, and I still haven't landed to a conclusion, is that you cannot succeed as a leader because without depending on the culture within which you work or are in. Leadership doesn't happen in a vacuum. So let's give an example. Kenya is a high context country, and when it comes to something like timing or scheduling, we're very flexible. Time is a moving continuum. In some countries, it's very linear. Japan, North America. If we say 10 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock. When we say 10 o'clock in Kenya, it means somewhere in the morning. If I invite you for lunch, it means come and eat with me. You can come at 2, you can come at 1, you can come at 3 o'clock. Therefore, as a leader, that cultural phenomenon of how we regard time it's something you cannot change. Yet, there are some things as a leader that you can change. Let's talk about the issue of seatbelts and packing people like sardines in matatus. We had a leader, the late Mishuki, who came and changed that. He took the matatu industry and made them accountable and insisted that we cannot park people beyond the number that a vehicle can carry. We have to wear seatbelts, they have to have uniforms. And it bore fruit and it continued. So that would be a very interesting debate that we discuss of to what extent does one influence the other. But I would like to talk about the Kenyan culture, because I think that the Kenyan culture can be typified by our matatu or transport culture. Debal showed a cartoon of people going home for the census, and it had the matatu. Matatu is part of us every day. What is the culture of the matatu? Because we are all part of this fabric of people. Very hardworking, extremely consistent. They get up at 4 or 5. You'll always find a matatu on the road, whatever the time. Very creative in the artwork that they do, the music they play. Very humorous, and Kenya has this culture and ability to laugh at ourselves. We are great in the world of sending Twitters and memes and the cartoons that we just show. Very competitive, though that is a very newer thing. Very cooperative in that Kenyans started working in SACCOs, started working in chamas from a long time ago. The cooperative movement was born out of working together. But we do have some, so that to me typifies the Kenyan society and what we have, the very positives. But we do have another side of us as Kenyans, and this is not matatu because they are very confrontational, is that Kenyans as a culture, we're not confrontational. In fact, we believe in consensus, harmony at all costs. That's a Kenyan cultural thing. If we're going to tell you something negative, we put it in very positive words. Sio mbaya sana. We are not direct. We don't like to upset people. We're very patriotical. We have this big boss, big chief, big syndrome effect. Therefore, we tend to put our leaders on a pedestal. We don't speak out. And we are also very tribal or individualistic in that while we're a society of consensus, our first point of reference is our family, our clan, our tribe. I sincerely believe that we have not yet transcended to nationhood. And that perhaps addresses most of our fundamental issues when it comes to leadership, because we perceive it within the context of me and my people. Why is it that at organizational level, at companies, we have great companies that are doing great things? Kenyans have a high value in education. How come we're doing extremely well in the touristic industry, in leading hotels around the world, in the Middle East, in Africa? Why is it that we perform so well in other places? So my view is that we are hardworking people, we're high value on education, we're very creative, we're very humorous, we're very cooperative within one another, within the context of my people, my group, my company, my family, my tribe, but we have not transcended to actually understand that we are more than a collection of different tribes, different ethnic groups, and therefore we look for leadership at a national level. We look for national leadership, but we have not, in my opinion, transcended to the place where we can talk about leadership, national leadership, and that we have a failing at each time. So who influences the other? What came first, the chicken or the egg? I guess we'll be having a very interesting debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Leadership does not happen in a vacuum. And of course, we'll also be drilling deeper on that also later in the program. Mike Eldon is walking to the lectern right now. He is the founder and the chair of the Mike Eldon Place of Tomorrow. That is the depot. He's a management consultancy firm. And he will also be giving us, his aspect of leadership and the culture factor. We'll try and reset my stopwatch here. You got 5 minutes, beginning now, Mike.
Thank you, Debal. Good morning, everyone. Morning, my friends here. I just love this one that I think now pretty much everyone knows about, that culture is the way we do things around here. And I think however overeducated we may be, you can't improve on that definition of culture. And the way we do things around here is a function based ultimately, fundamentally on our beliefs that are based in turn on our values. And these beliefs in turn affect attitudes and behavior. That's how we observe culture, how people behave, what my fellow panelists here have been talking about this morning is observed through behavior, which is a reflection of feelings. And so if this way we do things round here is a good way, then so many things are possible. You don't even need a brilliant strategy. Of course, it's good to have one. But if you have a good culture, then even an okay strategy will work pretty well. And by contrast, unless you have a healthy culture, the most brilliant strategy will go nowhere. It will fall flat on its face. It won't actualize. It'll have been a waste of time to hire expensive consultants like some of us here to work with us to evolve. So if you have the right culture, you'll go far. But what is this right culture? And any of us here and any of the people watching could easily rattle off many things that a right culture could be. I just want to focus on one word, a monosyllabic word, trust. And I always, when I think of this word trust as a core component of a healthy culture, I think of Stephen Covey's son's book, it's also called Stephen Covey, The Speed of Trust, which again sums the whole thing up so powerfully. When people trust each other, things can happen so much more quickly and more simply. You don't need bureaucracy, you don't need compliance, you don't need lawyers, you don't need contracts. It's a handshake. Here, handshakes mean extra things. And when you have a culture of trust in an organization, whether it's in the family, or in a company or an NGO, or at a national level or beyond, people will delegate because they trust. They will empower people because they are trustworthy. People will collaborate. They won't get stuck in their win-lose silos. And everyone will enjoy an uplifting learning and growth with merit-based promotion from within. We have plenty of such subcultures, such healthy subcultures in this country. I'm very involved with some of them where I'm a director and where I consult people. And it's not the case that cultures can't change. The existence of these healthy subcultures is the living proof of it. But it is a function of the leadership. And the proof of that is that when a leader changes, either to become a healthier culture leader, a more trusting leader who nurtures trustworthiness, or in the opposite direction, suddenly the whole thing will shift. It's quite extraordinary, the dramatic consequence of that one person, the disproportionate significance of the leader. And I think a very good example of a leader influencing a very large organization, a multinational corporation, is Lou Gerstner when he was CEO of IBM. And he helped restore earlier values of this elephant, this lumbering elephant that had got too bureaucratic and too comfortable with its incumbency. And he, as he put it in the title of his book about his time there, told us and described how it happened that he made elephants dance. Elephants can dance. People tell him, no, 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 once you're a big multinational like that, this is how things are. He didn't accept that. Kudos to him. Often it's the founder that establishes the culture of any organization. I guess here we have Jomo Kenyatta as our founding father, who established many aspects of the Kenyan culture, some of which persist, as we've been hearing, and some of which do not. Collaboration versus competition, for instance. But Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, wrote a lot about the founder's values as being, where the founder's values are being held onto, that is where organizations go from good to great. And leaders come in and they have to refresh, reinvigorate, reinforce the founders' values that took an organization to earlier success. I want to talk finally on this theme of that's the way we do things round here, to this wonderful book, That's Not How We Do It Here. And it's by John Cotter, with a colleague who worked with him on it. John Cotter is a professor of change management at Harvard University. And anyone who's interested in change management, which all of us should be, should read John Cotter on this subject. But this is a fable. It's like Who Moved My Cheese? And it's about a meerkat colony in the Kalahari Desert that was very well organized, had a culture of great efficiency in systems and processes and organization charts, and was doing very well. It was a large organization, maybe like IBM was. And then predators come and start snatching the young ones and taking their food away. But what this culture here lacked was agility, as many large organizations do, not least in government. And the question was, how did this young emerging leader, Lady Meerkat, being a very contemporary book, help change the culture? There's much more I'd like to share with you about this book. But let me just say that there are many subcultures in Kenya that are very healthy. Think about yours, and think about the fact that there is this spectrum. How come healthy subcultures can exist in a general culture where, as we've been hearing, not everything is wonderful? Where are you?
Thank you, Mike Eldon there. All right, and he's raised also important questions and reminding us truth is the healthy component of culture, asking what is the right culture, right? Culture is the way we do things around here. And do we also build on the values of our founding fathers, or maybe the founders of organizations as well? Maybe we can also probe that with our panelists, right? What if the values are not, okay, could we call them values if they're bad values? Do we have bad values and good values, right? That can be another question to our panelists this morning. But let's just begin with a Pete, where you are actually trying to give a dichotomy between power and, or defining power and leadership, right? You can be powerful, but not truly a leader. Maybe you can actually elucidate that more for us this morning.
Well, Devon, I think most of us know that politics in Kenya, and perhaps in many countries around the world, is about power. Even if you look at the wording that the president used yesterday when he talked about these dynasties and hustlers and so on, he talked about ascending to power. And in the discourse that is going on in the country right now, we're talking about things like Punguza Mizigo. We're talking about BBI. It's really about who is in power. We're not discussing leadership. Mm-hmm. If I could touch on the core discussion that we're having about the change that is needed in Kenya, which is driving us, for example, towards a referendum of one or the other. The issue that people are discussing here have nothing to do with why it is that the country is not working. Nobody is talking about the one thing that needs to change or needs to be looked at about our Constitution, which is Chapter 6. Why is that not working? Is it more positions we need? Is it less positions we need? Or is it a change in our values, a change in our integrity, and how we deal with issues of graft and bad behavior in leadership? So we have people who are scrambling to have power, but having no concept or no desire or readiness or even thought about leadership. Mm-hmm. That's the dichotomy that I was talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you talk about integrity, I think it is Florence who raised the issues of or the issue of values, and you're asking what are the values that really guide us on a day-to-day basis in our work. And in the first place, even as we struggle as a country, on inculcating our values, because they're all there enshrined in the Constitution. Do you think maybe the attendant institutions that should be doing this and streamlining our values? Because we always mentioned here also on this panel that, yeah, we have a directorship here in the country, I think in the office of the president, which is fully given the mandate to make sure that, yes, Kenyans are taught these values. Florence?
I'm reminded of a roundtable discussion that I was a part of about 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that we were talking about is the soul of the nation, and specifically the soul of the nation of Kenya. And in that meeting, we were asking ourselves, everybody talks about the Kenya we want, Kenya tuitakayo. And it just didn't begin yesterday. From the time when we started the multi-party democracy wave, everybody in their minds, and even when we started working on the Constitution, people had an aspiration of the kind of Kenya that they wanted and the kind of leaders that they wanted. And that's why we came up with this, with what I call maybe the bigger handshake of Kenyans. I know we have the handshake that happened in March 2018, that was a welcome, but we also had a bigger handshake where Kenyans contributed to the kind of Kenya that we want. And as Peter has said, there was a chapter on the whole question of leadership and integrity. And so in that discussion, we were asking ourselves, in order to have the Kenya that we want, that is based on the Constitution, that we drew out rules for ourselves and how we would be able to evolve into a nation state, what are the kind of Kenyans that will make that Kenya that we want? So it's not so much the Kenya we want, looking at it from a distance, but it's also asking ourselves, who are these Kenyans that will make that Kenya that we want? Because the Kenya we want will not exist in isolation of the Kenyans that we want, or even the Kenyans that we need, for that matter. And so for me, the whole question of the soul of the nation, the values that are guiding us, we have the Big Four agenda, where we're talking about more manufacturing, housing, and it's a good thing. And we've got our infrastructure on course. But without us having values within the nation state that talk about service to others, and when we talk about power, power is a good thing. But if power is misused, then we end up where we are today, where we have rampant corruption, right? We have people who we've elected to serve us, but when they get into positions of power, one of our panelists here earlier on said, what is this that happens to people? Good people getting into positions of leadership and changing. And yet these individuals are living within the subcultures that we just heard about. You come from a culture where if today you were to carry out, like I've done role plays with leaders, and I ask them, so what are those leaders that guide you on a day-to-day basis? Including politicians, they will tell you integrity, love, honesty, trust. That's what they will say leads them on a day-to-day basis. And yet the product of that is not visible, within the Kenyan context. So I think for me, it's a question that we really must address as Kenyans. Where is the soul of the nation, which is the software of how we operate on a day-to-day basis?
Where is the soul of the nation? A good question there. Let's come to Professor Dominic Mwenja, because you raised also a very interesting aspect of that, trying to compare all the culture within different continuums here. And there was also an interesting question that was coming from Cindy in light of what we're discussing this morning. And she was asking, why did President Uhuru bring up the issue of dynasty? I found the issue irrelevant. Anyone can vow for presidency, whether a father was an ex-president or a hustler dynasty, etc. Someone's background, it says here, something just happened. Someone's background is irrelevant. I'm losing it from my laptop a bit. But in the aspect of diversity, diversity continuum and the hate continuum that we're talking about, this is a narrative that has come now to to the public arena right now. That you're either on the hustler side or the dynasty side. And it's being shoved down our throats, and it seems we're helpless. We just will buy this narrative. So where is the population, where is the citizenry really caught up in this particular two, polar opposite or polar, positions as far as dynasty and the hustler nation is concerned?
Yeah. Yeah, Dibal, leaders shape the culture in their own words and actions. That one we have to agree. Their words and the action, they do shape culture. And there's something I like to say, that the poor are awake because they're hungry, and the rich cannot sleep because the poor are awake. When you look at those two, and then you look at the continuum that we were just talking about, where you have group placement within the continuum. And the group placement is based on, one, the race, the tribe, religion, cultural aspects, and other factors that place a certain people in a certain way. Then you have the individual locator within the continuum. And that is composed on our experiences in life. If you go to Kibera today and to all those, that's why when you have a whole bunch of poor people together, they don't know who is Kikuyu, who is Kamba, who is Luo. They're all busy hustling with life. Now, enter the leader. That's why I say leaders have an impact by both their words and action. Enter a leader who sees now, by me taking people from the individual locator where they are and they don't actually care about all these other things, they put them in these little boxes for their own personal benefits. Now, if you look at the very rich in any society, be it America or anywhere else where race and religion and all those things, there's actually no difference. There's agreement. You go to Modaigas, there's no this one and that one. When you go to the very poor, they're all the same. But when you come to the middle, and that's where all the differences start to come in, because everybody is trying to position themselves for whatever reason. That's where our leaders are coming from. That's why my sister here was saying, we elect these people, and all of a sudden, once they get to power, it's as if they had a brain transplant. They become totally different from the people that we elected. And when you look at that, Dibal, our actual position as individuals within the continuum is based on our experiences as individuals. And therefore, the issue of who is where, who has what, does not arise, because everybody is busy. And that commonality of issues make us one as individuals. And that's why the national leadership, we should be very conscious of the words and the actions of those who are in leadership. Take Lee Kuan Yew, for example. In Singapore, the 1967-68 race wars in Singapore, where the Malays are fighting the Indians and the Chinese and everybody fighting everybody else, he consciously decided he wanted to build a Singaporean nation. And by law, you are not supposed to lease or rent your apartment. If you have a 100-unit apartment, you're not supposed to lease to more than 25% of people from the same ethnic group. That is forced integration. It was deliberate and methodical. And because of that leader behavior and action, we have a Singaporean nation where you don't have a Malay, you don't have a Chinese, you don't have all the other tribes that are in Malaysia. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere went through the same. If you go to Tanzania today, irrespective of all the other things, they are Tanzanians first before they are anybody else. You come to this country because of the politics of the continuum. We are able to get people in that group, the group locator, I call it group placement within the continuum, where we say these people are this way, and therefore, because they are this way, you cannot trust them with this, you cannot do this, and because they're able to benefit from that, they exploit that continuum.
Thank you.
So that's why we have to pay attention to leader behavior and actions and what they say and do.
Right. We had Mary really talking about also the Matatu culture. and what it really epitomizes we as a country as well. And I thought maybe you'll be greatly shy because the last time I actually mentioned Matatu in this forum.
Yes.
You really got a bashing as
No,
well.
I love them. I'm a transportation expert.
We heard.
So
And people are really quoting you out of context.
Yeah. But it's nice to needle people a little bit. I'm thinking about all this, and I believe that perhaps what I said at the lectern about us having this small, what you're calling locator, the small families, tribes, the issue of national unity and leadership and national leadership lacks. And I fully agree with Pete when he talks about people are really looking at authority as opposed to leadership, because leadership is about influence. You know, it's not about authority. You can have power over me and tell me what to do, but you may not influence. I'll do it because I'm compelled to. There's an old adage, and Michael, help me if I get it wrong here, that we use in business when we say that what gets measured gets done. So that's why you have measuring KPIs, key performance indicators. You measure things in a company so that you make sure they're done.
They like the alliteration. What gets measured gets managed.
Yes, it gets managed. So if you're concerned about employee numbers of people who are leaving the organization, you want about staff engagement, then you measure that. If you don't, then you just measure profitability, you measure turnaround time, you measure costs. And when I looked at, somebody talked about national values and, you know, what is it that perhaps we try? I looked at this lovely book that you always have here for us, The Constitution of Kenya. And in chapter 2, clause 10(1), it has national values and principles of governance. I don't know which ones are national principles, which are national values, but there are about 17 of them. And if you go down each one of them, patriotism, do we have it? No. National unity, do we have it? No. Sharing and devolution of power, in progress. Rule of law, which is so important. No. Even you had the Chief Justice talking about the overload of cases. Because if you don't have justice denied is, you know, there's an expression about, you know, you must be able to dispense justice to people.
Justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes, justice delayed is justice denied. Participation of the people, we're trying. Democracy, we're trying. Human dignity, no. The way we treat people. Equity, social justice. When you go through all these things, we don't measure them. And therefore, while we may say we have national values, the fact that we don't measure them, we don't hold people accountable to them, we don't ensure that there's good governance, there's integrity, there's transparency and accountability, even the way we select leaders of Chapter 6, because we don't follow it. If you don't measure it, you don't follow it, you're not accountable for it, we will never get that national leadership and that nationalhood we want to aspire to. So what do we measure? We measure hard work, we measure wealth, we measure what is important to ourselves, because perhaps, as you say, we want to propagate a certain theocracy or a certain group to continue being the rulers. And for me, that is the issue. Look at countries that are now debating whether we should be measuring GDP or whether we should be measuring happiness index. And a number of countries now measure other things. Even UN in the stability index measure other things other than just GDP. Yeah, you measure the gross happiness index, the quality of people, access to water, access to social justice. We need to really see, if we're serious at a national level, then we need to measure more than just economic factors, because they will then define the quality of life that our people are having, and therefore demand leaders who come up and measure higher than somebody else. Yeah.
So do you think in this country we can actually have a cabinet secretary and we have a docket of the Ministry of Happiness, like maybe the way Dubai? And how will that be? Will it be a hard work for this cabinet secretary to give us a report on the reality on the ground? Are we really happy as a country? Yeah.
Actually, all you have to do is to draw lots and appoint one of us here. I'll go for Mary.
Yes. I'll do it very well, but I don't think I'd ever work national
because of the mischief in her.
Okay, Mike.
I first want to comment on this one about the referendum and more jobs, if I may.
Yes.
And of course, the rationale is a laudable one as expressed. It's because we don't want to risk violence, which is a bad value, around the electoral cycle, and for it to interrupt economic development and hence the prosperity of our people. So that's the uplifting expression on why a referendum, why handshakes, to avoid this ethnic clashes. Well, it's nice to have peace rather than violence, but of course it's not sufficient. And that's where the challenge arises, the expense of government, how it does relate to all these other values. You mentioned the Directorate of National Values.
Yes, yes.
There are good people there. But my sense, having heard them talk, is that they are too infused with a government civil service style of thinking rather than a high impact, exciting way of communicating that will catch the attention of leaders who in turn will have powerful scripts to use. Vision 2030 did a very good job on that. Now we're getting Makweni Vision 2025. Yesterday I was reading about Meru 2040.
Wow.
And so a lot of this business of inspiring that we were hearing about is the language. The language in the constitution of the values, where you just have 17 words, it won't work. It doesn't work. I think I've mentioned before, I'm the co-chair of this multi-sectoral committee on national values and culture change. And we've had good conversations with the Directorate of National Values, with people in Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, people in Vision 2030.
Why don't you, alert him that we are looking for him? At least he should come to the show as well, yeah?
I will. I hope he's watching. But otherwise, I will alert him.
He never picks my calls.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's see if he picks mine. So that's another cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing, yeah.
So the question is, how do we bring these values to life? 17 is far too many. The other one is, how do we measure values?
Yes.
Most people think that, unless it's shillings or kilograms or whatever, you can't measure it, so forget it. That's why when we had performance contracting, judges and diplomats and teachers said, you can't do performance assessment with us because you can't measure what we do, MPs. Whereas, of course, you can, because you do assessments through what are called soft instruments. It's utterly doable. And again, these healthy subcultures do it. We know how to do it. But everyone who doesn't want it, who doesn't want to be accountable for behavior and values, simply get away with saying it can't be done. But that's just not true. So we need, people like us need to spread our influence as we communicate in language that is uncomplicated, powerful, inspirational, practical, to give these scripts to the ultimate leaders. Yes, at the organizational level, but going down to the family level, of course, very much into the schools, and up to the national level, where some of our governors are doing a great job.
Right.
No, they are. They're
Thank you.
doing excellent.
So, Peter, also, I just want you to comment, especially on the behavioral expectations. Since now the question would be then, how do we pry ourselves from this particular, morass that we've been put in of the dynasties and the hustler nation, right? Because it seems then there's a sort of a behavioral expectation that the citizenry, they're supposed actually to align either to the dynasty or the hustler. And should we buy the narrative of the hustler nation anyway in the first place? Because I think there is a cultural aspect that really comes with that. And what will that be? Maybe we can actually put it on the table and discuss together.
It's an interesting conversation that's been going on for some time, and it's true that very few people have actually challenged it. Until now, you sort of see people beginning to engage with it. But what's actually happening is it's like a movie. We're watching a movie that every day we wake up to see, who's against who and who's going to win against who. And the discourse is about who gets what, rather than how do we gain as a population. So in many ways, the population of Kenya, and we're talking here specifically Kenya, has become a bit complacent and also with a sense of helplessness. When you see something happening and you feel like there's very little influence that I can have, you end up actually allowing it to happen or finding a way to just join it, because you see, actually, it's not, I don't see any forces or whether it's the religious community, civil society, that can actually challenge this thing. And so you have and I use your word continuum, Professor, which it's also a continuum of desperation, a continuum of hopelessness that ends up becoming like a bubble, like you're blowing air in a balloon, assuming that you can blow it into the balloon endlessly. And my fear is that there is a red line somewhere. There has to be. You cannot continue to, I hate this word, but continue to rape a country, continue to trample on people's values for self-interest, and expect that somehow we just can keep this going forever. At some point, somebody must blow a whistle or blow, ring a bell like you do to say, guys, stop, because if we don't do that, circumstances will force itself, and it will happen in a way that is not so nice.
And so if we are really caught up in this, and because, as politicians, they have propagandists who are trying to drive the narrative, and it seems maybe it is washing over us very insidiously. We're not really aware of it, be it the dynasty, be it the hustler. We begin the conversation, but who are the people who should actually break this particular narrative? Is it you? Because yes, as you say, there is a vacuum, truly. It is just, we buy this thing, hook, like, and a sinker at the end of the day, and no one is really challenging. So who is meant to challenge this? Florence.
I think I would say that Kenyans from every sector have a responsibility. And here I'll point out including the media. Because constantly we are perpetuating a similar narrative of what the politicians would like us to hear. I'm privileged to occasionally organize what we call safe spaces, where you have courageous Kenyans who meet to deliberate on the issues that are happening in the country right now. And the conversations that are held in these safe spaces are to look at these issues that we're discussing and asking ourselves, how do you bring about hope? How do you help Kenyans to become courageous followers, not just thinking that what the leader says is what goes? And how do you change the narratives that we're hearing on a daily basis? So for instance, we've had the Building Bridges initiative ongoing and dialogue processes across the country. A debate has been, do you believe in the Building Bridges initiative? Do you join it? What do you do as a Kenyan? And yet you know that we want to break the cycle of violence that we see every 5 years. So I'm aware that, for instance, the religious leaders equally came up with their own dialogue processes, visiting the various counties, talking on some of the issues that the Building Bridges initiative is also talking about. You have other groups that have also come together and are having these conversations, all geared towards saying, we are not helpless. We are Kenyans, and we have a stake in what happens in this country. And to pass on the message, loud and clear to even our leaders, that the reason why you are in those particular positions is to serve the Kenyans. When we talk about values of dignity, and we hear the millions that are being siphoned out of the coffers of the taxpayers' money, how does a Kenyan have dignity when they cannot access basic services? And those basic services, be it health, be it getting proper jobs, be it quality education, security, those that have stolen from the taxpayers' money are making sure that Kenyans do not live in dignity. Is that service to your people? Is that leadership? So it's a question of us also interrogating and asking ourselves, when we talk about leadership, and we've talked about it here, it's not power. It's not ascending into a position to accumulate wealth. Leadership is not materialism, just acquiring for yourself. Leadership is being in a position where you can serve, where you know that if I'm elected to a particular position, my aim is to bring quality life to the ordinary Kenyan citizen. What quality of life is there when people are living in slums? What quality of life is that? So I would be very embarrassed to call myself a leader if the kind of quality of life that my people are living is not one that enhances their dignity, okay? That makes them feel they can reach their potential. So I feel we can turn things around. And I think every sector, and more importantly the media, will play a very, very critical role in highlighting these subcultures that we're talking about, where things are working, where you have leaders who are actually visionary and who are changing the culture within the organizations. And some counties that are working. Not all political leaders have failed. There are some political leaders that have a vision, that have a direction. Those are the ones that we need to highlight and emulate.
Thank you.
But the followers need to be courageous.
The followers need to be courageous.
Yes.
Right. So, Professor Dominic, when you talked about the culture of handout and the culture of hard work, and do you think in any way also the media is perpetuating this? Maybe in portraying the culture of handouts. We have also interesting editorial cartoons like this one. I think that was earlier drawn by Egado. This is the handshake. This was the handshake too, and we can see there is a check being handed out from the Hustler Bank, to some of our politicians here. Of course, this is, but the narrative behind this is about just the culture of handout and the way we Kenyans, we want to, receiving freebies, handouts, and we don't really think at the end of the day also how that will affect us 5 years from now. 50 shillings, 100 shillings, we are being bought from different sides of the political, divide as well. Maybe you can comment on that and the culture of hard work.
I'll start by looking at what I call the individual locator. We are individuals first before we are placed in a certain place in the continuum, or before we are grouped. And politicians are very good at putting us as a group. What we should be able to look at is to look at the aspirations of the individuals within that continuum to make sure they don't fit in the group that these other individuals want to put us in. In economic terms, my sister here and my sister here talked about economic growth. What we have in a lot of countries is economic growth without development, what I call growth without development. We have...
And without jobs.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You see, because we measure by GDP, and you have all these wonderful things that are happening to grow the GDP. But when you look at the core of the society that's driving this economic growth, there is abject poverty, there is unemployment, what I call soft infrastructure that grows the individual. And that's why in leadership, we should have a leader who has the capability of seeing both the part of the economic growth and economic development at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to see a whole bunch of wonderful the infrastructure, beautiful buildings, beautiful all these things, and then the people who are working under they are so poor. Some of them are even afraid of using the same infrastructure and the things that they are being. So paying attention to the individual aspirations is extremely, extremely important. And that's why when you look at the unemployment, when you look at the youth agenda, when you look at all those things that make countries develop, as leaders, we have to pay attention to them on an individual level so that we purposefully and very deliberately go after those programs that uplift our people. And that's why, for me, paying attention to how leaders behave is extremely important for me. If you go to countries like Vietnam, for example, I spend a lot of time in Vietnam. I think my brother has been to Singapore. And if you look at Vietnam, and because of lack of political, some people would say I'm not being a very good Democrat, but at sometimes visionary leadership that does not give space to a lot of diverse views, where every rat has a right. You probably need that. And that's why I say sometimes you need strong leadership that has a vision than this other leadership that gives everybody what they want and everybody is going nowhere. And that's why a leadership comes in. If you look at between China and India, for example, same populations, but totally different economic growth levels. If you look at China between 2005 to 2015, over a 10-year period, they literally doubled the economy from $6.7 trillion to $13.6 trillion. Now, what made all that possible is the leadership, the model that they assumed, how they were able to drive the economy both inside the country and outside the country.
Thank you.
So when we look at all those things together, we have to look at the leaders in totality, not what they are spewing out of their mouths, but what they're actually doing.
Right. Let's hear from Mary.
I fear, I've had the issue, Mike talked about peace, and then there was again peace here discussed. And I fear that sometimes we're being made to worship at the temple of peace without really substantive fundamentals being changed. I think Professor is quite right in that what is the real focus of leadership or delivery by government is quality of life. The best way to heal somebody who's got a big wound is to open it up and clean it and look at it and give it antibiotics. And only by looking at that wound and cleaning it and fixing and understanding what caused it, and then you have to give a tetanus jab. But I sometimes fear that some of the things we're doing in pursuit of peace is not really peace after all. True peace, if you look at the Bible and you read the Bible, what is true peace? It comes from issues of justice, issues of fundamentals. But we're sort of bandaging things and saying, for the sake of peace. And we have seen so many things done for the sake of harmony. And that's what I was saying in terms of an African people, in terms of our psyche, is that we will sometimes sacrifice courage and individuality and things to move because we want consensus, we want harmony, but that may do you bigger harm in the long term if you don't address basic fundamentals. And we see quite a bit of that happening. Yes,
Thank you.
Professor.
Let's hear from Mike Eldon. Mike, and then we prepare our headline thoughts because we are also winding up, Prof.
This one of over-worshipping the Temple of Peace is a very interesting one. I got very involved with this in 2008 when I was part of the group of Bethwell Kiplagat and Daniel Opande and others in Concerned Citizens for Peace. And I learned so much about the relationship between peace and truth and justice. And there was a great division, a very serious division between the conflict resolution and peace-building community on the one hand, and the human rights subculture of civil society on the other hand, because the human rights activists were over-focused on truth and justice, and we felt insufficiently concerned about the urgency of peace at a time of great violence. So it's not an either-or. It's a question of how you mix the two, and sometimes when you emphasize which ones sequentially. But you have them all in mind. And there has been some wonderful work done on this, some plays from South America. You're nodding, I'm sure you're more than familiar with them. Role plays people do, people like Alice and Deritu working on this. It's well understood how holistically it's not over peace. And it's like around the time of the 2013 election, the media was concerned about over-focusing on peace without justice. The private sector was accused of merely being concerned about business continuity, which wasn't the case. We want the longer-term well-being with all these things, but it's easy to accuse any subgroup of only being concerned about this one. It oversimplifies what shouldn't be simplified.
Thank you.
The other one, just quickly on the media.
Very briefly, we're winding up.
Okay, yeah. In 2004, I was involved in an interesting mediation over the MOU between Kibaki's group and Raila's group. And we wanted these politicians to talk more nicely, to have a culture of greater respect for one another. It's like we would have wished this pseudo-mediation in the Parliament to have been better. And
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. We got to give our headline thoughts. I'm being chased out of a studio. Peter Dang, 10 seconds?
10 seconds. Well, Dibal, I think I would just simply say that I think it was Einstein who says that you keep repeating the same thing and expecting different results. Then you're a fool. And I want to say that there are certain things that we're discussing as givens in this country. And we've gone through many years of let us fix the Constitution, let us change this law, let us do this to fix our problems. We are an indented, over-indebted nation, a lot of cost.
Thank you.
And we're about to go into this referendum. And I want to just say that there needs to be a conversation about stopping this train of the referendum and not just assuming that it has to be done either this or that.
Thank you. Right, Florence?
I think for me it's to say that we should revisit our values as a nation, and to see what are those values that restore human dignity, and leadership should be in the forefront of helping us revisit.
Thank you. Right, Prof?
Yeah, for me, I put it in economic terms. From the economic growth we have seen over the last five years, to where we are now with the Big Four agenda, which is now looking at the soft infrastructure that I was talking about. And therefore, if you look at the leader behavior, you'll be able to understand where Uhuru is coming from. The first 5 years is to spur economic growth. The next 5 years is to put the soft infrastructure within the Big Four.
Thank you.
So that we have economic development.
Right, thank you. Mary?
Mike said at the beginning that behavior is what typifies culture, and culture comes from values. I would not say revisit values. I would say let's measure them. These ones we have 16 or 5 or 10 of them. Let's start measuring them, and that will bring attention and therefore drive us forward.
Thank you, Mary. Mike, lastly, 10 seconds.
We don't know everything the president said yesterday, but what we do know is what made it so easy for the media to take this movie theme of conflict between hustlers and dynasties.
Thank you. Let's leave it at that then. All right, we have Muslimas saying, lastly, very healthy discussion on leadership. The key factor leaders should focus on is improving the quality of life of the people they lead. Diana, just one more. Also, Kennedy is saying leadership is character, attitude, orientation. Also, and I think I read that. We have also Albana's. This is Albana's Kyoko saying, say hi to Prof. Mwencha, a guy who has taken a bold step in beating white supremacy and initiated Miramar University in US with campuses in Kenya. He's great, and I'm proud to have had a chat with him. This is Albana's also saying hi to you as well. And lastly, Bing Charlie is saying, spot on, mediocrity always defends itself. I think there are a lot of them. We can't read them all. But thank you for your contribution as well. And thank you to our panelists for this very interesting treat we've had this morning on leadership and the culture factor. Thank you so much. Living in This is up next.
Buy a Smart Cab Plus from us at 1.25 million shillings and get 47,000 every month. A Smart Chap Chap Cab at 675,000 shillings and get 25,000 every month. Maridadi Motors. Move your status.
Now you can get your Uber ride with a phone call. Call 0800 722 000 to ride.
I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
I lied about a sweet. That I didn't see it, but I. Katibu kata wakata. Katibu kata wakata.
Wewe utafanya nini?
Kuna watu wanasema ati hiyo ni ukijaribu kuconfront mama yako juu amechukua pesa ulipewa na mgeni. That happens.
Naweza toa song ipate 500 views na God aliintend au ndo asintabless. So the moment history ya industry lingia tukaanza ma award system, hizo ma award zikafanya watu waanze kuimbia award badala waimbe the word.
NTV, turning on your world.
Living with S in association with Minute Maid.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Living with S. I'm your host, Sharon Mundia, and we are at the Myra Residences by Trianum. Now, I've got 3 guests with me here, one of whom has been on the show before, and since she was here in November, she seems to have been really busy. We are talking about the Kenya Animation Festival, which just lodged submissions were lodged on Sunday, just this past Sunday. So we've got Ashley Kibali, who's the CEO and co-founder of 72 Media Group. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's glad to be here. I'm
yeah,
so honored.
and I'm so interested to hear, like, have you been resting, taking time out? Because it just seems like project after project.
Yeah, I think I'll rest in December, perhaps.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll take time out in December. But for now, I'm so excited to hear about, like, even the animation festival. We've also got Lydia Mugure Wangi, who's an animator.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, we've got a gentleman whose name sounds like he was meant to be a star. Emon Peter Mulan. Or Mulan. Mulan.
Yeah.
Emon Mulan. Fancy. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Oh, animators. I've never had animators on the show before. I don't even know if I've ever met someone who is an animator by profession. So, thank you. And I've got so many questions. So first, tell me a little bit about yourselves. Let's start with them because I know a little bit of your story, Ashley, but tell me a little bit about you, Emma. Were you always interested in, you know, cartoons, animations, being a creative?
I've always loved animation. I remember how I used to run home after school to watch Cartoon Network.
Okay.
And Saturdays, just sitting there watching Club Kiboko till 12.
Yeah.
But I never really thought of doing animation myself. Yeah. Until 2012. That's when I thought of doing animation as a career.
Yeah. Did something happen to trigger that or to change it for you?
Yeah. It's in 2012 when I first started looking for a job, being serious with it. So I drew a comic book. And then the first place I took it was Nation. I wanted to be at the back of Sunday Nation. So I wasn't that lucky that time. I went back with it home. Then my cousin came home and then saw the comic I had drawn. And he was like, do you remember Super Strikers? Yeah, Super Strikers is now an animation, is playing on TV. So he was like, how about you make this comic of yours to be playing on TV like Super Strikers? They used to be on magazine, but now they're playing. So that's how I started looking for animation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. And what about you, Lydia? When did this spark first ignite in you?
Let me say, the first time I was interested in animation was when I was in Form 2.
Okay.
I was in Maryhill and the fiber animations started coming out, and so I realized, oh, we can have animations in Kenya.
Yeah.
So I checked my plans of becoming a vet and took up art in high school.
Yeah.
Then furthered it in Kenyatta University, where I'm in my last year. And now I've begun working as a freelance animator.
Wow. So just to be clear, you both loved drawing and you were good. You were also good artists, right? So it's not like you wake up and you're like, I think I want to do that, and you start doing circle man, stick man. That's my version of anime. You would not watch my animation. Let me tell you that. Thank God. Yeah. Yeah. So you are both also talented artists.
You kind of have to be, because about 1 second takes about 24 images, and if you're using traditional animation, you have to draw all of them by hand. So
1 second, 24 images.
He works with 30. I work with 24.
So those are like the flip books that you see, and there's someone exactly walking, and then he starts running.
Exactly. Yes. But that's an old method.
Okay.
It's no longer being used. Really.
But essentially, that's what you say. It takes like if you're doing that old school, it's 24 to 30 images for a 1 second shot.
We just call them frames.
Oh, sorry, pardon me. Frames.
Clearly, everybody has their own path.
Yeah, it's a good thing I'm not drawing or animating out there. So Ashley, tell me how this became of interest to you. Yeah. I mean, I know you've been passionate about film, but animation. How did that shift take place?
After we did the film festival, there was a demand for more. And we were pushed to the wall. We were like, okay, now what are we going to do? So we did a lot of research and just to understand that what can we do to just make sure we give more to people, because the filmmakers wanted more and the animators wanted more. So when you did the research, it was very sad to find out that we have amazing, great animators in YouTube, but few are known. So we were like, how about we do animation festival? The same format as the film, call them to register, give them a theme, give them a time duration for them to animate, and let's see what people can do. Wow. And it has really gone beyond our imagination. Like we are just amazed by what we have seen so far.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So let's go back to the world of animation for a second. What does it take to be an animator? What do you, I mean, I know right now you've just said you need to be a good artist, but so for someone who's not familiar with this world but are keen, maybe they also like Cartoon Network or just have been interested in drawing.
Maybe if I start with the cliche, say you have to work really hard on it.
Right.
Yeah, you really have to work. It's not like animation is not like riding a bike. You see, when someone knows how to ride a bike, they never forget.
Right.
But animation you can forget because you're using a software. So how constant you are with the work makes you better. Yeah. So when you start doing animation, you have to keep on doing it. Don't stop.
Okay.
Yeah. The moment you stop, animation moves so fast. There are plugins. There are so many things that are coming out over the years. So by the time you're moving back to doing animation, people are on another level.
Wow.
Yeah. So you just have to keep on doing it and doing it. Even if you don't really have a major project, you just do something for yourself.
And so it starts with drawing. I mean, for you to start this, and pardon me if my question seems silly, but I really am just so curious about your world. So you start with drawing on paper. Like that's essentially the first skill that you would need to be a good artist on paper, and then move to software.
You don't exactly need to be a good artist. You just need to, as long as you can put a form and say, I want this guy to be in this position at this time, then you can move on to software. You don't need to be as good as Picasso. You can, as long as you can hold a pencil to some extent.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So now you were called to submit your work, a 4-minute video. What were the guidelines around the submissions, Ashley?
So what we did is before we just called out, we had to do a research and see what is the best way that animators can tell a story. So we gave them a theme of Africa unity.
African unity.
Yeah, African unity. So they had to figure out how they can come up with an interesting story that tells about each other's country, because it's an East African platform.
Okay. Then, so this is open to East Africa?
Yeah, it's open to East Africa. And then now they went ahead to animate based on their story, but just using a theme that you gave them. Right. So before we called the festival, because we didn't know who are the animators, we had a workshop, a whole day workshop. And that's where we met around 48 animators, and we talked about animation. They were taught really about animation and distribution and the market. And they went ahead to animate, so that now they have finished submitting this past Sunday. judging is starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the Gala Awards is now coming, then they get awarded.
Right.
winners.
Oh my God. So when you're going through that process, do you first have a character in mind, or the story is already set out? Because this isn't just about drawing. You become the director, the story. I mean, there's so many layers to it. So what's your process like? Maybe you could start us off, Lydia. How did you go about this?
When I got the theme, the first thing I work on is not a script for me, but I think animation, what's most important is the storyboard. So that I could at least understand this is what the character will be. The character will also look like this. My film only has 2 characters. Okay. Because I really do not have 60 days is a lot of time, but it's not enough for a massive production.
Right.
So mine would be a very simple story involving 2 characters. If I have a storyboard, I can follow exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Then after it's done, I build the characters. Mine is, I find it easier to draw girls because as a reference, I can just walk in front of a mirror and turn around.
Right, of course.
So
of course, yeah.
The character would have to be female.
Yeah.
Colors, I just took the Kenyan flag. Heavy reds, massive greens, and a lot of black and white. And the next character was an animal, an elephant. I got the reference from Sarao. His bones are currently on display at the Kenya National Museum. Okay. He was a big guy, so that was a lot of fun to make.
Yeah. Oh, nice. What was your process like?
For me, I started with the storyboard. So with the storyboard, I first look at how they shot, because you have to make something that my type of animation looks big, but it's not really that big. So I have to storyboard and look at how I'm going to place the cameras, and we have the virtual cameras in the softwares. So you have to know how to place the cameras. And then after that, then I think of what exactly I'm going to do. And then I think of the entire story from start to the end. And then I start the animation process with the characters, thinking of the characters and buildings.
What? Wait a second. Cameras?
Yeah.
Cameras for what?
Well, apparently for you to be a good animator, you must know some basic camera.
Cinematography.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, if I pull rule of thirds, the golden compass, you have to use all of those so you can get at least a decent looking shot.
Yeah, so within the software itself, there are cameras inside. So you have to know how to move the cameras. Yeah.
This is just where did you go to refine your skill? Because this is obviously a lot more layered than I know how to draw. Okay, like it's a lot more detailed. So where did you both go to study animation?
I studied Shantao in CBD.
Okay.
I'm actually self-taught.
What?
Yes.
School of YouTube or?
School of YouTube.
School graduated. Of
YouTube. So you can join the club, right?
Yes. This looks like there's hope. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very easy. These days there are lots of tutorials online.
Okay.
So.
And you've been an animator 4 years?
Yeah. Ever since I started school,
yeah.
I took film technology because Kenyatta University wasn't offering animation at the time.
Okay.
But I was told they'll do an animated course when I'm in 3rd year. So I reasoned, okay, I can get the other skills until I reach 3rd year.
Yeah.
Then I taught the class when I was in 3rd year.
Whoa!
So that was fun.
Look at you. And how long have you been doing it for, Emon?
About 5 years now.
5 years.
Yeah.
So in the 4 or 5 years that you've been doing this, have you found many other people in this industry?
No.
Yeah.
I've only met 6, 7 counting, who have left today.
Before the 35.
Yes.
Right?
It's like finding a unicorn. So rare.
Okay, finding a unicorn.
Yeah, I haven't met many either.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. Do you find that the industry is supportive of animators, understanding, supportive and appreciative of animators, the film industry in Kenya? What's been your experience?
You start.
When it comes to animation in Kenya, I think so many people don't really understand animation. Like you can, even before going to the film industry, you can go to a company and then you want to offer some animation service. They've already used the animation in their previous adverts, but when you tell them about animation, they don't know what that is. Yeah, so due to how not very known animation is in Kenya, so many people don't really get why you'll ask for this much to do this kind of work. Yeah, so some people may view as a con, like you say, for example, this cost 100K, and someone doesn't really understand why you want 100K for this, because to them it looks really simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but just from like the few minutes we've been talking, that's the one word I would not use when it comes to animation. Like nothing about what you're expressing or explaining right now sounds simple. Do you think that KFCB or, you know, stakeholders like those are doing enough in the industry when it comes to animators and supporting them in the film industry?
I can say they're trying, but one of the people that has been very supportive is Kenya Film Commission. Even for this particular festival, they're one of the main partners. And what they have done is they've opened themselves to other storytellers and what people are doing, and they're open to their ideas. So I can say we're getting there. However, there's room for growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's room for growth. All right, we've got to take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Breakfast is not complete without the new Minute Maid NutriDefense's Nectar Plus. Complete the most important meal of the day with the goodness of great tasting juice fortified with vitamin E and zinc to complement your family's nutritional needs. Minute Maid NutriDefense's Nectar Plus. Breakfast complete.
This week on The Trend,
Shower, shower, bless my soul.
the evergreen Wahoo is bringing her A game. Gillard will be here too.
Anayeingia sasa ni President Kingston.
Brenda Jones has something to share with us.
Ndio kulauka. Saa 7 imebakisha.
All this only on The Trend. Nation FM. More music and less talk. Nairobi 96.3, Mombasa 101.5, Meru 93.9, Nyeri 104.9, Eldoret 102.7, and Nakuru 97.7. Follow us on social media on Facebook at Nation FM, Instagram at Nation FM, and on Twitter at Nation FM KE. Nation FM. More music and less talk.
You represent the interest of the kingdom of God, of the King of Kings, of the Lord of Lords. So you go and speak on my behalf.
That the Lord is good. Oh, blessed.
God wants to use us as instruments in his hand so that the many who are in bondage and slavery can be set free.
Be the Lord. All you say, he'll give you everything. He'll give you everything.
Can you speak to the mom who is either labeled by others or herself as bad mom?
There is no such thing as a bad mom.
I didn't even know there's something like postpartum depression.
You hear of stories of moms who have, thrown their babies in a pit latrine, and you'll be like, what? When you are depressed, you become very emotional. So a certain Wednesday, I went for Bible study, and the entire time I was just crying. As I was coming home, I did not realize that there was a car, and before I knew it, I almost got crushed. And that is when I realized, you know what? I'm not okay. I need help.
Super Loaf, Slices of Life.
My name is Joyce Njogu. I'm the head of consulting at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. It's a business membership organization for manufacturing value-add industries with close to 1,000 members. From Daily Nation, we've been able to build our brand as CAM. We've been able to build the credibility of CAM, because the more you communicate through the Daily Nation, the more we have partners wanting to engage with us and be part of the development agenda.
Our leadership isn't challenged. And that's the truth. Daily Nation. The truth.
You are watching Living with S in association with Minute Maid.
Welcome back, everybody. We're at Maya Residences by Trinum, and this year I've been schooled on animation because I didn't know anything about your world, and that's because the Kenya Animation Festival has been ongoing for a couple of months, and just a few days ago they submitted their entries. I've got 2 of those people who are part of the 35 shortlisted. That's Emon and Lydia. We're going to watch their animations in just a moment. But first, I want to hear from you, Ashley. You mentioned what the theme was. Yeah. Africa
Unity.
Sorry?
Africa Unity.
Africa Unity.
Yes.
Why that theme?
Because one thing as Century Media is you're very intentional to promote and produce African content. And when we were really looking back for our theme, we were like, let's first make it intentional that people have to go back to their roots, and let's tell our own stories as Africans. So we wanted the Kenyans to tell their own stories and other countries to tell their own stories.
And are there different categories through which people could submit, or how does it work?
Yeah, so what we did for the Kenya animation is we realized we do have many animators in Kenya because we had done our research on that. So we opened up to East Africa. So we had the Tanzania, Rwanda, Kampala, Sudan, and Somali, you know. So what we did is we had different categories because all animators are different. Like Hashi specializes on kids content, you know. Okay. So we had the kids category content for age 2 to 8 years rather.
Right.
Kids content. Then we had the general content now for everybody who can watch. Then we had the music video because everybody has their own niche in animation.
All right, it's music videos as well. So how would you describe your type of animation, Lydia?
Mine is, whenever I show off my work, I'm told it's very similar to Disney. So I go for a highly stylized look. My main appeal is aesthetic. It doesn't need to make sense in reality, it just needs to look good. If I want bubbles instead of clouds, I will put bubbles instead of clouds, just because it's better for a kid to look at bubbles instead of clouds.
Right. So now that you brought up Disney,
yes,
I do want us to talk about like some of their work. I'm so curious to know what you guys think of Lion King. The old animation versus the one that was recently. Have you watched it?
Yes.
You've watched it. I guess you guys would jump into this must really speak to your creative soul, trying to be like, So what were your thoughts on that?
I prefer the old animation.
Okay.
The new animation, then the 1990s version had more spirit. Things are more lively. Things are even more bright and colorful. The current version, it's beautiful to look at, but I can't tell if I'm watching a film or a nature documentary because even the animals' expressions, lions don't smile, so you can't tell if it's happy or sad or angry.
And what were your thoughts, Emon?
There were a lot of changes that were made compared to the last, the 1994 and the 2019 version. And those changes have made the 2019 version not to be that appealing compared to the old one.
And this is in terms of the animation, the actual animation, not the storyline? Okay.
Even the storyline itself, there are some changes that they made.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll prefer the last one they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over
I've heard several people say that. I'll be honest, I haven't watched the new Lion. I feel like I shouldn't have said that.
I also prefer the old one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the new one looks like computer generated.
Okay.
Like it's not. The old one is really live. Like it's the real thing.
Yeah.
It was alive.
So so do you find that in your animation you're aware of that, and especially with you, Lydia, given that you do have that, you said you do sort of fall towards that Disney appeal. Are you looking for something that's it's unreal, and you're happy to speak to that rather than trying to represent it as perfectly?
Yeah, I prefer. Reality is boring as it is, so I try to go for as fantastic as I can.
Yeah.
Like if it's a building, I'll not make it average colored. I can make it bend in whichever direction. The laws of physics do not apply to my work, so I can do whatever I want.
Have fun with it. Evan, how would you describe your work?
I love going for photorealism type of animation, where animation that looks kind of real, like the Lion King.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Lion King,
like the new Lion King, you mean?
Yeah, like the new Lion King.
Yeah.
But see, the new Lion King, they're redoing an old version of Lion King. So if it was original Lion King, it would have been really awesome. If like
because then we're basing our judgments off of our childhood.
You have something else to compare to. But I prefer the photorealism type of animation because it's the type of animation that they use mostly in Hollywood. Yeah, when it comes to visual
like Spider-Man fighting like a big monster, and you're just like, that thing really looked like it took down a bridge.
Yeah,
like it looked real, like you guys, you've suffered.
That's the type I love working on. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, so I want us to take a look at your work. So why don't you look at, let's say, this camera. Why don't you look at this camera and introduce your film?
Okay. My film is a short film, Liwe Liwalo, the story about a young girl and her friend, a massive elephant.
All right, so Lydia, first of all, let's talk about the body on that woman. What's her name? Does she have a name?
Liwe.
Liwe. Oh, of course, duh. So, her hair, the curls, the body. She looks like she's been working out, drinking the water, and just minding her own business. So, tell me the inspiration behind Liwe Liwalo.
The inspiration actually came on accident when I was looking. I've registered for this animation festival, but I have no idea what to make. So I'm just walking through. I decided I usually go to historical sites like the museum or the archives for inspiration. And I see this massive skeleton of an elephant, and I'm like, this guy must have had a lot of stories and met a lot of interesting friends. So let's make a story about him. Let's say he met a young person. Let's make it a girl because they're easier to make for me. And they became friends after she helped him out. So conflict, a thorn in his foot. I'm not quite sure what an elephant has.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Let's call it a foot.
Yeah.
So she helps it out and they become friends. If I was going to go on, if I would make it into a longer series, I'd make them go on interesting adventures.
Oh, nice. So were you conscious to not have conversation there and for the story to just be, be its own and be...
I originally wanted to have conversation, but then I realized with the elephant style, it would look too jarring. And it would also take a lot of, 60 days is a lot of time, but for dialogue, it really isn't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lip movements in every word we are saying. Right. So to transfer that from a human to an elephant, that's no, I don't think I would.
Yeah, it would have been difficult.
Yeah.
So what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Her hair.
Her hair, okay.
Her hair was, I wanted it to be real as possible. I didn't want to put her, I kind of understand the reason we don't have a lot of characters of color. They are a lot of work. They're a lot more work than they have. As it is, when you put a particle system, the hair comes in form of a particle system. If you put it on a model, it is always straight. So it's a lot easier for any animation studio to just have a character with straight hair. But majority of Africans don't have straight hair. And those curls, our hair is really curly, and those curls take up a lot of computer memory.
Wow. So there's just so many layers to it. What did you think of her animation?
First of all, I was blown away. I was like, how did you do this in 60 days? Yeah. But at the same time, I was really sad because I'm like, people like her need to be seen. They need to be recognized. We need to have more platforms like this. We need to go beyond what we see as advertisements in terms of animation. Yeah.
And I guess, you know, that's why like projects like this are a great platform to even bring each other, you know, to sort of form a camaraderie and allow others to, you know, other animators to meet, to be able to be inspired by your work, to be pushed a little by each other's work. Yeah? You've watched her video too, right? Thoughts?
I found it really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice animation. I wasn't expecting to see someone like doing the like jungle. It's a jungle kind of feel.
Yeah.
It was really nice. I haven't seen that in Kenya yet.
Yeah. Oh, nice. All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I know I'm so keen to see what your take is with the photorealism angle and stuff. So we're going to do that right after the break.
Why aren't you wearing the ring?
2 is company.
I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about this.
Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Hatimaye kuna kitu cha kuwaburudisha kina dada. Hii ni ya wale wanajitambua, yani wale wanajiamini.
Funny someone took their sweet time and thought about us.
Hawa wananielewa.
Washi, madam, machi, magaldem, na
We're here to get our single ladies the Mr. Right. They are Mr. Right. Yes. Kama kawaida, and you can only catch us on
Rambo TV.
Rambo TV. Simply beautiful.
Tell me more about my biological mom.
She was a housekeeper. She worked for your parents.
I'm glad she didn't have an abortion.
She would never have done something like that. So how's Scarlett? Have y'all set that wedding date yet?
Not yet. But when we do, you'll be the first one to know.
Before we get married, I really want to finish the plans for the church. It's the least I can do for God.
Yeah. I just saw a gun.
Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Why did you wait so long to come to the hospital?
I didn't feel too sick.
September 2019 and January 2020 intakes are ongoing. Call us today on 0724 256 162 or 0725 751 878. Kenya Methodist University. The future is here.
Je, maumivu ya kichwa na kukosesha amani? Kaluma Strong hutuliza maumivu ya kichwa, maumivu ya mwili na hata huondoa joto jingi mwilini. Kaluma Strong ina aspirin kama kiungo. Maumivu yakizidi, muone daktari.
Changes in programming.
Just need to relax and don't stress out, okay? There you go. So I go here. There you go. There you go. So you can see that all the spots we have picked have had one thing in common. They are all referring to our pain. The things that I can't handle is active infection. If somebody came here with a gushing wound or a fracture that is open and stuff, that is not my work. I send that patient out to the hospital.
Super Loaf. Slices of life.
could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could.
You are watching Living with S in association with Minute Maid.
Welcome back, everybody. Right, so before the break, we saw Lydia's work. Now we get to see Emon Mulan's work. Take a look at his 4-minute entry for the Kenya Animation Festival.
Hello?
Hello. Honey, you won't believe this.
Believe what?
I'm going to Africa.
No way. No way. Africa? Will you be okay there?
I don't know, but at least I have insurance.
Please come back alive.
I'll try.
Love you.
Love you too. You know, I was told this is Kenya. Kenya. How do you guys come up with such names? Kenya? No offense, man. I have a friend in Nigeria called Lucas. Do you know him? Looks like you don't talk too much. Hey, Kenya is really beautiful. The buildings, the people. Is this a joke? What do you mean? I mean, where's the forest? I want to see the forest. The lions, elephants, naked painted men holding spears, the war, needy children, and oh my god, what? There's even KFG here? This is insane, man. Is this really Africa? So what do you know about Africa? Pretty much nothing. Okay, I'll make it simple for you. Africa is not a country, and it is not a jungle. And this is Kenya. Well, now I know.
Hi, baby.
Hi, sweetheart.
How is Africa? Are you okay?
I'm okay, and you won't believe this. Africa is like another side of New York.
So Emon, wow. You were just going out there for every stereotype about Africa and about, like, you know, black people. I think you were just like, let's just put it out on the table. Okay, we're going to talk about it today. So tell me about your story. It's called Reaching Rich Africa.
My story was, I got inspiration from how African education system is more about the European. but the Europeans don't really teach anything about Africa. So most of them, they don't really know so much about Africa. What they see on the news is what they think of Africa. Like when they see the war and see the needy children, that's what they see. They know about Africa. So I wanted to make a film that shows the other side of Africa that they don't really talk about. Yeah, so that's why I had to model an entire, okay, not really an entire city, but a city scene that shows that Africa has places that are quite civilized, like the West and other places outside Africa. Yeah.
So sort of trying to break those stereotypes.
Yeah, the stereotypes of Africa is a war zone, Africa is a feminine heat place.
Yeah. And how did you come up with the name, Reaching Rich Africa?
I just thought of it.
But what does it mean? Like, can you reaching?
Rich
oh,
Africa.
coming to rich Africa.
Yeah.
Oh,
the guy, I just named the guy the New Yorker.
Yeah.
The guy has never reached Africa, so it was the first time he was reaching.
Okay.
Rich Africa.
Right, I get it. Coming to like Africa of abundance.
Yeah.
And that driver who was just like, oh my God. First of all, it's Kenya, okay? It's Kenya, not Africa. Africa is not a country. So how long did it take you to do this, to create this? Like, were you, I know it's 60 days, but like how many of those 60 days were you, how many hours?
The render took around 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, rendering. But I have to combine that with the final and editing and everything, around 3 weeks, and then the rest from planning, from the first day when we left the
workshop. Right? Yeah. Geez, so what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on Reaching Rich Africa, Ashley?
Yeah, I think for me, first of all, I was like the building itself, because he animated like an entire Nairobi city, you know, and it's quite. I was just amazed by it. And just the fact that there was details in it, just even showing KFG.
S72 Club 72.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and even the person himself, the animator himself, the black and the white one, I'm like, and it's really amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the animation details, but I think for me that's what I...
Yeah, I guess we can't critique on that level. It just is, But you can.
Yes,
because you understand it.
I like let me just give some technical terms.
Yeah.
I liked your refractions. The glossy textures on MG building were especially amazing.
I thought the same, the glossy texture on the building.
You managed to put in a crowd animation, which is something I have not been able to accomplish. So props to you for that. That's something that usually requires an entire team in a company like DreamWorks.
Whoa!
So props.
I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing those things out. We would just be like, wow, it looks great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We didn't see the details.
But you understand,
I respect. You are one league above me, but I'll get there.
Hope you guys will end up doing a project together, since you already have a combination of skills.
Yeah, why not? And speaking of projects, what projects are you both excited to come into? What are you working on? What would you like to share, if we can have like a sneak peek of what's coming up?
I can share that in December, I've been working on Kenya's first 3D animated series. Season 1 is 12 episodes long. We are currently at episode 1 to 4. We are editing 3 and 4.
Whoa!
It's called Agent 254, following the adventures of 3 kids in Nairobi, specifically Pangani, after they discover some new alien tech and become the city's superheroes.
I love this so much! I love it so much. That is incredible.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. If anyone from Netflix is watching Showmax, what are the others? Hello. I want to be able to access this for my family, for my nieces, my kids. Like, I just want to be able to watch characters with buildings that I can point out as I'm driving across. To be like, oh, that's the one. Isn't that the one that we saw? Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
That's just so epic. Eman?
I'm currently working on an action type of animation. Yeah. So I'm trying to make a scene that's taking place within Nairobi City. Yeah. So it's like a time lapse that shows Nairobi City from the beginning, and then to the place where it's like Armageddon type of scene where it's all grown. There's like plants in the city, everything. People are not there and stuff. That kind of scene that's post-apocalyptic.
Oh, wow.
So cool.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Okay.
That's really
Hollywood.
cool.
I think we know, I think we know who we're calling here. Wow, that's, I mean, it's incredible. And genuinely, I am so excited. And I try, I'm going to go off for a second, but allow me here. But I try and look for people on TV who represent and who I can identify with. Even with like my family, I want to raise, you know, daughters, sons who are able to see themselves and be proud of their own. Because this statement resonated with me so much. MDQ, Muthoni Drama King, once said it. You cannot build what you do not love. So if we see images of things that are our own, we fall in love, and we're more inclined to want to do that, to move forward. Let's build. So thank you.
That's true.
For our children, thank you.
That's true.
And what about you? Now that you're, I don't know, you're non-stop working and creating projects. What's next for?
I think for us, especially after this, seeing what people have submitted, we got 35 amazing entries from East Africa. We are very intentional in creating a platform that showcases African content and anybody can access it, you know, and even creating a platform that creates opportunities to expand the work of storytellers, you know, like animators and filmmakers. We're going to do more film festivals. We're going to do animation festivals. How, we don't know, but you're going to do it. Because we have to tell our own African stories. As you've said, we have to see our own African characters, or African buildings in animation, you know. We have to see our own Lion King at some point, you know. So that's what we're going to do, just creating a platform for them. And now they're able to connect with each other. And even now, even for us, partnering with other organizations, because you can't do this thing alone, you know. So you're open to even get more partners and even more individual collaborations.
Yeah. So what do you guys think is the future of animation in film in Kenya?
Well, as it's so young, I can only see it going up because most Kenyans really enjoy animations. If the Fiber Guy is a testament to that. Everyone sees a man in a loincloth and be like, oh yes, that's the Fiber Guy. So if we can have more of that from both corporate advertising and regular programming, I think we can go really far.
I think more popularity, make it more popular, will be nice. Because animation, so many people don't really understand animation. Like for maybe a student telling the parent that they want to do animation, and then they will just say like, is it to our toto? You know, it's cartoons. They don't really understand the whole thing. Like animation is actually a career that takes about 6 years to study. So the more people are told about animation.
How do you think social media would impact this space? Do you think that, like, I'm curious to know even for you, if you use this platform to sort of share the process, give people an understanding of how much work it takes, how much time, or even just to be able to get a taste of your work. Have you used social media at all?
Primarily, actually most of the work I get is via Instagram, where I post some of my works and people just be like, oh, can I get a commission on this project? Like, mostly they're from a lot of kids who have a lot of kids and writers, children who either want to see their characters doing a certain action, or writers who want their work to be taken to another medium. So mostly, social media helps. It gives me revenue and in a way of, it's how I market myself primarily.
She gets from Instagram, I'm mainly from YouTube. So I share my links from my YouTube channel. And then people look at the animation, then they come to me and say, I want something like this, because there are different types of animation. There's type of animation called motion graphics. See, motion graphics is the type of animation that so many people use. So there's a number of them in my YouTube channel, so some people may look at them and then they say they want this type.
Okay, so now that we're talking about, we're plugging, why don't you plug? What's your YouTube channel and what's your Instagram account?
Great Mulan Animations.
Great Mulan Animations on YouTube and
Nauta Studios.
So Nauta Studios on Instagram.
Yes.
And for you, it's
for you.
Do you have all these projects that you do? Is it a different page that you have to manage?
Yeah, we have
should
different
they just
page.
go to 70?
We have different pages.
Different pages.
But
okay.
for now, they can go to YouTube Kenya Animation Festival, and they can watch the entire 35 submissions, which are going to be released. And this week after jury.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they get to see all 35.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Genuinely, you know, one of the things that I genuinely love about this show is that I get the opportunity to step into a world that I would normally never have understood or had a chance to understand. So thank you.
Thanks as well for giving us
and
this
thank
chance.
you for giving us this platform. The last time I was here, we were just doing our first project, as I've told you, and you didn't even have a single partner. You know, but it's through your show that people get to know what you're doing and even expand their work. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and all the best, guys.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Oh, and thank you, of course, thank you to our hosts. That is Myra Residences by Trianum. A beautiful space if you're looking for a quick getaway or even long stay as well. All right, we'll be back same time, same place. That's on NTV tomorrow, 8 a.m. So I better see you guys there. All right, bye everybody.